You are seen. You are worthy. You are not alone. The world loses one person to suicide every 40 seconds. Let's change the stats. Together, we can say not suicide. Not today.
Money. It is something that we truly need to survive. But the question is, to what lengths would you go to obtain it? Would you kill someone for it? Would you steal for it? Or would you tell the family secrets in certain ways you feel, even if you knew it would embarrass your family and could possibly break up relationships? Some people will do exactly that. Join me as I examine the case of the Moment of Truth TV show with Lauren Cleary on this episode of True Crime, Authors and Extraordinary People.
Welcome to True Crime, Authors and Extraordinary People, the podcast where we bring two passions together. The show that gives new meaning to the old adage, truth is stranger than fiction, and reminding you that there is an extraordinary person in all of us. Here is your host, David McClam.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of True Crime, Authors and Extraordinary People. Of course, I'm your man, David McClam. Hey, if you haven't already, make sure you follow me on all of my social medias. One link to a link tree will get you every place you need to go pertaining to the show. And as you heard coming in, and as always, if you are someone or you know someone who is contemplating hurting themselves or others, please call 988. You can text or you can call them. This is the suicide prevention hotline, and they can get you the help that you need. And just in case no one else has told you today, let me be the first to tell you, I do care and I do need you to be here. All right, before we begin, a couple of things off the top. If you hear unusual noises coming through the microphone, I'm sorry for that. I do live in the part of California where it is extremely windy. And today it is so windy, I can hear everything, even tree branches smacking on the top of my house. So I do want to apologize for that if you do happen to hear that during this episode. Also, I am going to be setting up things finally in the next couple of weeks or so for monetization on the podcast. If you do like what I do, I hope you will consider supporting the show. It does cost money to do this show and to go to these places. And I guarantee you that every dime that you give to the show, if you decide to support me, will go back into the show. That includes various trips that I have to make throughout the year, as well as making sure the equipment stays up and everything that I need in order to shoot the show. So I hope that you will join me in supporting the show. And I thank you either way. If you're just a listener or you are also going to be a supporter, I could not be more grateful for you listening to the show each and every week. Always at the end of the show, I do tell you the other shows that I participate in. I do co-host the other show, Extinguished, with LaDonna Humphrey, and I produce Deep Dark Secrets with Amy Smith and LaDonna Humphrey. I'm bringing this up at the beginning because now at Extinguished, we are doing a very important case. And if you've never listened to Extinguished before, I beg you to listen to at least this case. It is the case on Deanna Stevenson. As of this recording, we have already shot the first episode and we'll be recording the second episode here probably this weekend, which would be Friday or Saturday from the time this is being recorded. Every week on Sunday, that's going to drop. We need to get more ears and more eyes on this case. There is so much to it that it may even take LaDonna and I longer than 4 weeks to shoot it. And you do know for a fact that we're onto something if we're already getting emails out the gate and it's only the first episode. We're going to tackle it over there. You heard me interview her cousin, Kaya Penfield, who started her own podcast called Stand Our Ground because nobody was investigating this case. And we have people from the other side that send emails about how she deserved to be shot and we should know the law and there's no cover up. Let me tell you, people, there is definitely cover up. And you know me, I don't put my name on things just to put my name on them or to have clout or anything of that nature. So when I tell you that I've looked at all of this evidence, and this is the reason that LaDonna and I decided to go full force with this on Extinguish, I'm telling you, tune in. You will agree. There's cover up. There's corruption in the police department. Something is not right with this case. And we're hoping that by doing it, we can get it reopened and somebody else to take a look at it. So please, if you have not listened to any episode of Extinguished before, please make sure you tune into that one every Sunday now during the month of March and possibly going into April with this one. All right, today's case, I think, is going to prove how far some people will go for money. Now, I know that this may not be the typical true crime case that maybe you're expecting. We've done cases like this before, and I did the case of the McDonald's fraud. But just keep in mind, true crime does not always end in bloodshed or murder or rape or any of that. There are many types of crime. There's crime against humanity. There's crimes against morality. You name it, there's all kinds of crimes, and we try to cover them all here. But this case specifically, I wanted to bring because it does show how far somebody will go, even if it means that in the end of it, you could change your life the way that you know it and lose a lot of people. Now, even though I did watch this show and I remember this episode vividly, I have to give a shout out to true crime YouTuber Cringe Against Humanity with Mr. Black Pasta. He brought this back up in an episode that he did about a month ago, and I said, I need to bring this to the audience. Go check out his channel. He does great true crime over there. I have been watching him for quite some time. So shout out again to Cringe Against Humanity with Mr. Black Pasta. Today's episode is the Moment of Truth episode with Lauren Cleary. Fair warning, this episode will deal with infidelity. It will deal with theft. It would just deal with morality as a whole. If you do have triggers around those things, this may not be the episode for you. Sit back, strap in, get your popcorn, guys, because this episode is going to make you think. It's going to make you think about yourself. It's going to make you think about what somebody else would do if it came to you and it came to money. Would they go on a national TV show? And when they air out any dirty laundry or secrets that, well, you may have or you may have shared with them. This episode made me think about these things too. So let's get started. If you don't know about Moment of Truth was a show that aired from January 23rd to August 28th of 2008. What their goal on this show is to invite you to come on the show. And they're going to ask you some questions, and they want to see if you are going to tell the truth. For every truthful answer you give, it gets you up the step of earning money. So I think the first prize category is $10,000. You have, say, 4 questions in that tier to answer. And if you answer all 4 of those questions correctly and truthfully, then you get that $10,000. You don't get the 10K though until you answer all these questions. So if you tell a lie anywhere in between there or anytime after, you lose everything. So now you may be wondering, well, how do they know if the people is telling the truth? Well, this next part I'm going to tell you should also take heat off of the show. Because I've read comments of people go, oh my gosh, this show is ruining people's lives. They just sucker punching people. They don't know what they're going to be answered. I'm going to tell you all of that. Definitely not true. First of all, just because they make a show does not mean you have to go on this show. Nobody's coming holding a gun in your head saying, man, if you don't go on Moment of Truth, I'm going to shoot you right now. Sign the waiver. No. You decide to go on the show. And when the producers call you and say, hey, we got your application for Moment of Truth. We want to know, are you still in? You have the right then and then to say, you know what? I kind of was thinking about this show, what it does, how you explained it. I'm out. So you can't blame the show. You have to blame the contestant, because here's how they know if they're telling the truth or not. Each contestant is called in and they're giving a rigorous lie detector test. The producers want you to really understand this is a rigorous lie detector test. Just not no normal everyday test. They're making sure on this thing. Now they get asked 50 plus questions, but only 21 of those questions will be selected to be asked to you on the show. These questions deal with anything from the very, very innocent all the way to, did you kill somebody? Have you killed somebody in the family? All of that kind of stuff. I mean, it could be anything. Based on the questions that they are asked during the lie detector test, the contestant already knows the questions that they possibly can be asked, because it will be 21 of the questions that they ask you right there. Now, if you're anybody like me, and I'm sure you are, and you watch a lot of TV, you have to start thinking it's TV. They need ratings. It's not going to be boring. So you already should know they are coming for the jugular with these questions, especially if you get further up the ladder. I even would bet money that they make the contestants sign a waiver that basically says, hey, if your marriage collapses because of this, if you lose your job, you can no longer blame the show because you chose to come on here, sign this waiver. This way, the production company at Moment of Truth don't get sued because somebody's going to go to court and go, I went on this show and now I don't have a wife no more. Okay, well, you signed the waiver. Sorry, sir. See you. So that is how the show is set up. Now you know how Moment of Truth works. Let's get into it. So Mark L. Wahlberg, not to be confused with Mark Wahlberg from Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, the actor, but Mark L. Wahlberg is a TV actor as well as a host. He comes out at the beginning of this episode, which is season 1, episode 5, and he says that this was the most uncomfortable he has been on TV, and if he had his vote, it would not have aired. That is a big one coming from Mr. Mark L. Wahlberg. Let me tell you why I say that. In all of his hosting duties, if you ever followed Mark Wahlberg's career, then you would know that he hosts a show that is very controversial by the name of Temptation Island. I believe that show is still going on today. Temptation Island takes about 4 or 5 unmarried couples, but they are dating couples, and they bring them on this show. And they ask them the question before they come on, are you willing to go on this show? They let them know this show could ruin their relationship, but they're at some type of a crossroad in the show to now where one or both of them want to know, hey, are you really the person I'm supposed to be with? Whether it goes from the man hasn't proposed marriage yet, or the woman is too stuck up, or both of them works too much and they don't find time. I've heard it all. So they decide to go on the show to really see if the grass is greener on the other side and if they can be tempted away. The name of the show is Temptation Island. Now, you see these couples at the beginning, they're all like, oh, man, we going to make it, baby. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. Okay, man, look, temptation is temptation. If you are with somebody else, you should never put yourself in any position to where the temptation could get you in trouble. And boy, they set that up on this show. So the women have a villa all by themselves where they go and reside. The men have a villa all by themselves. However, they ain't staying there alone. I don't know the numbers because it's been a while since I listed. I'll just say for hypothetical use, 20. In the women's villa, they got 20 single dudes of all races, nationalities, colors, body types, you name it. On the men's side, they got 20 women. Same thing. From the beginning, it's a competition. These women and men come out and they're like, we here to get your man. They're all single looking for, by the way, a girlfriend or boyfriend. They're not coming in really hoping that you walk out with the man or woman you came with if they're into you. And they tell you this in the beginning. They even start pointing people out. Yeah, I want that one right there. I'm coming for you. And then you see the man and the woman sitting there scoffing like, yeah, you better stay away from that. They host parties. I mean, these parties get wild. I mean, they got jammy jams up in there. They got pool parties. I've even seen it where people started jumping in the pool butt naked. This is the kind of show Temptation Island is, which I don't watch it anymore. Mark Wahlberg is the host of that. He already knows that there's couples that ain't going to be the same when they leave. he's counseling them on all of these sessions, because what I didn't tell you is they actually take little snippets of what's going on just to sweeten this pot. So they're taking snippets of what every one of the men is doing over there, and the same with the women, and they're playing these clips of what they call bonfires for the significant other. So let's just say there's coming in Kate and Gerald. He'll look at Kate and go, Kate, how do you feel Gerald's doing over there? And she may say, oh, I think he's doing good, and I don't think he'll do anything to disrespect me, and I just think it's going to be good. And then Mark here said, well, right there in front of you, you got that iPad right there. Why don't you go ahead and check out what Gerald was doing? Now, he couldn't have been doing anything, right? But they picked the most damning moment, and then they edit that down. So let's say Gerald was just sitting in a chair by himself, sipping on a Mai Tai, and he ain't doing nothing. He's just observing. But all of a sudden, the girl comes to sit on his lap, but Gerald goes and pushes her off. Well, the only part they show Kate is when the girl sat on Gerald's lap. You didn't see what he was doing before. You didn't see the push that he made immediately after. They edited it down right there because that is the controversial moment. Now, what do you think Kate thinks? Oh, so that's what we doing? All right, I got your number. So I'm going to go back to my villa and hook up with Rex, who wanted to hook up with me since you're doing this. And Gerald wasn't doing anything. That's how this show runs. So when Mark Wahlberg says this is the most uncomfortable he's ever been on TV, and he would not have aired if it was his vote, that has to make you think. He's seen some pretty uncomfortable stuff, and it never really bothered him. They even called this episode a special edition because it was coming out. And they give many disclaimers. They give one at the beginning, and then they give one in the middle of the show, again, about he didn't want to air this show, and what you're about to hear is going to be uncomfortable. So Lauren Cleary was a 26-year-old hair tech, and they allow you to bring some guests with you. So with her, she brought her mother, Kim, her father, Jay, her sister, Monica, her husband, Frank, and her brother, Tim. And then I believe that they even know who you bring in, because some of these questions is formulated towards the people that you brought with you to the show. Now, as you start this tree, the questions are pretty mundane, right? They're not really going to be damaging anything, nothing of that. However, you should already know as an audience participant where these questions are going to go, and the contestant should already also know what question he's going to ask because of the way that he sets this question up. So what Mark will do is he will ask an open-ended question. So in the first question, he asked her, what do you do for work? In which she answered that she was a hair tech. Boom. First question. And they always play this dramatic music, right? So it's like, also dong. So you know something is about to come up. So the first question was, as an employee of a hair salon, have you ever told a customer you liked their hairstyle when in fact you didn't? She said, no, that was truthful. Okay. Well, that was pretty easy, right? So now you know how this show is pretty much set up. Every question is going to be set up with an open-ended question. So when question 2 comes, you already know that they're going to just ramp this up at this point. We're going to still go up the ladder till we can get as personal as we can. It was a personal one, which he did ask her, what do you like to do for fun? So based on that, we already knew it's going to be something to do with something fun or something wild or something crazy. So the question he asked then was, have you ever flashed a stranger just for laughs? Now, at this point, he asked the husband, Frank, hey, you know her better than we do. Do you think that she ever did that? And Frank's answer was, yeah, she probably did it because I've done it, so ain't no big deal. Of course, she said she's done it. Went on to the next. Pretty lighthearted at this point. But now this is where the tide begins to turn when it started with question number 3. And it gets pretty ugly from here on out. She was asked, you were a veterinary assistant at one point. She says, yes. And he goes, also, do you like animals? She says, yes. And he says, well, that would be pretty important to the job, you would think, right? Yes. Then he asked the question, boom, big old sound comes down. Would you give food to a stray dog before you would give it to a homeless person? And she said that she absolutely would give food to a stray dog before a homeless person. And when he asks, he's like, why would you do that? And she says, because the dog looks at you with this cute little puppy face. And this homeless person has a really nasty, dirty face. I was appalled by that. My answer would have been, I would give it to both. I've done it. I know those of you that don't live in California, you were like me before I moved here. You hear places like Hollywood and West Hollywood, and you think of the glamour and the glitz and the stars and the Walk of Fame and all of that. All of that does exist, but there's a part of West Hollywood and there's a part of Hollywood that is poor and is homeless. And Los Angeles alone has the highest rate of homeless people per any state in size. I was covering a store in West Hollywood and there's a McDonald's there. And one day I went down to that McDonald's and there was 2 young men and a dog sitting outside. And he looked at me like, sir, can you help us out? So I asked him, I says, what's going on? I said, you guys look pretty healthy. Well, what's happening? And they said to me, they go, well, sir, we've had some problems and we had to move, but the place that we moved to won't accept our dog. And we just can't get rid of our dog. We'd rather be homeless than to give up our dog. He is like a family member to us. So we're hoping that people would help us eat and we can feed the dog. There is people that will not go to shelters, people, because of the fact that their dog or their cat cannot go with. I don't know how you feel about animals. I have several of them. I can tell you right now, if a fire broke out, the first things that we're thinking about getting out is make sure the other spouse gets out, whether it's me or my wife that discovers it, make sure the kids, and make sure that we grab the dogs, the rabbit, and the guinea pig on the way out. Now, if everything else burns down, we're going to be pretty sad about it. But it would be devastating even more if we lost one of the pets. So, of course, I don't carry cash. The only time I ever carry any type of money is when somebody's paying me back and they go, hey, I can get to the bank to put this in the bank. Here's cash money. But otherwise, I don't. I run off of my debit card and my credit cards. And I looked at them. And this is another test that I do. Because if somebody is truly hungry, they're not going to care if you give them food or money. They're going to take whatever it is that you can give them. And I say, hey, I don't carry cash with me. I don't have any money, but I'm willing to buy you guys some food, whatever it is that you want to eat. That's another thing. Just because somebody's down on their luck, people, if you're going to help somebody out, if you're going to help them. Make sure you get them something to eat that they want to eat. Just because they're asking you for money and you have the upper hand doesn't mean that you should be like, man, look, I'm going to get you a chicken McNugget and that's all you're going to get. No, imagine we're all really, if you look at it, unless you're a millionaire, you're a billionaire, you got all these millions in the bank, we're all one paycheck away from being the people that we're helping. And if we were out there and we were hungry and we were thirsty, we would want somebody to help us. So I said, man, look, whatever it is that you want to eat, don't worry, you don't got to share nothing with the dog. I'll get the dog something too. And I did. I'm not telling you guys this to pat me on the back and say I'm a good guy. I'm telling you this to prove the point of Lauren Cleary, which is that there is a way that you could have helped all 3 of them or all 2 of them. You should never put a dog over a human being. Just feed both of them. But what did it cost me? It didn't cost me that much. Maybe I even made out better if you think about it, because I go to McDonald's all the time, so I'm collecting points at that point if you want to look at it that way. But I looked at it that I had 2 hungry young people out here who couldn't have been any older than 25. Remember, people, my oldest child is almost 33. Okay, so I'm like, if this was my kid, I want somebody to help him. And the dog was cute. I'm thinking, man, I got dogs at home. They got food. My family got food. Man, let me help you out. But no, she said she wouldn't even give the homeless person anything. And that started to turn the tides on that for her. And after that, they asked her a few more almost harmless questions about her brother and sister. I will post the episode down in the show notes if you want to watch it, because if I covered everything that they asked her, we would be here all night. The main one to take away from about the sister, which was, would she be a surrogate if her sister could not have a child? She did say yes, and that lie detector said that she was telling the truth. This gave her a few more points back on the board, but she wasn't 100% redeemed. But now further into the episode is where it gets really, really, really bad. Because remember, folks, this is for $500,000. One question wrong, you lose everything you've built up to this point. So it's at this point that Mark tells the family that there is a button in the middle of the floor. And if at any time they want to skip a question, they can press the button and it will be replaced with a new one, but it can only be used once. And he looks at the husband, Frank, and say, Frank, why don't you go ahead and test it out? He hits the button and makes the sound, so we all know that the button works. Now, after he tells the family that, just to recap what happened with some of the questions going forward, turns out that Lauren has been fired for stealing money. She took joy when her siblings got in trouble when they were younger, and she hid a secret from her mom about her dad, which we never found out what it was. But now I'm going to assume, because of the way that he looked at her and she looked at him, is it has something to do with infidelity. Now, the shocking thing is, after that, her daddy walked up to her and gave her a hug. And I thought he was going to walk up to her and slap the mess out of her. And Mark Wahlberg was just as surprised as I was. But he gave her a hug after that question. In which Mark said, I'm just kind of curious that why did you come up here and give her a hug? Because she's a good kid or because she hid the secret? And he was like, I don't really know. And then he had looked at the mom and says, Mom, is there anything you'd like to say? And her response was, we'll talk later. So now we're at this point. She's just outed that she kept a secret for her dad and she's been fired for stealing money, that she delighted when her siblings got in trouble. What else possibly could she have done? And at this point now, she's up to $10,000. So that $10,000 is securely in her grasp. She can get up and walk away. But the worst was yet to come. Again, at this point, like I just stated, she could have walked away, collected her $10,000, left whatever damage she just done stay there. But the family was feeling good so far, right? Because the fact that Mark's like, hey, you can leave now. Do you want to leave or keep going? And the family's like, go ahead, keep going. Because these questions, it's really not that damning. That is something that they're about to regret, though. So then Mark now starts going into questions about her marriage. Now, remember, Frank is sitting right there, just feet away from her. These are all things that Frank does not know. But she knows that they could be coming up. Just keep that in mind. So it turns out from the question that was asked that Lauren has pretended to sleep and have a headache in order to avoid intimacy. Now, I know some of you listen be like, man, I've done that and maybe I felt bad about it. Okay, I get that. I know it happens, which my advice is just be honest. I don't feel it right now. Can we do this some other time? But the most disturbing thing is they are still to be considered as newlyweds. They just been married under 2 years. This is usually the time where people who just got married is all over each other because it's something new to them. They're always there. They always have access. But no, she's now faking headaches and pretending to be asleep. They looked at Frank and Frank was kind of like, all right, that's kind of, I can forgive that. Now, once again, she is now given this option that she can go, or she can go fast forwarding to the next tier because $10,000 ended that tier right there. She says, give me the next question. So fast forward now, we're at the $25,000 question. She's cleared the $10,000 tree. Mark is looking very uncomfortable. And he tells her that the questions will be getting more personal and that he feels that she has already answered more of the questions than any other person would endure at this point. And that he is not looking at the next tier questions, but he's looking at the questions right now in his $25,000 tree. And he's going to tell her that these questions are about to get deep. Do you want to continue? Now, any logical person be like, man, look, I done cleared the 10,000. They don't ask me about my job, if I stole something. I done gave up that I covered a secret from my dad. I know the questions they asked me in this lie detector test. I know some things coming about my marriage is going to be even tougher than what he just asked me about faking headaches and stuff. Maybe this may be a good idea just to say, you know what, Mark, it's been real. Thank you. Let me take the 10,000 and go. No, that ain't what she said. She said it was not about the money, but it was about getting things off her chest. Man, it just gets worse from there. So Mark says, okay, let's do it. He goes back to her marriage. Now from there, in these next questions, we learn that she blames her husband for the lack of close friends, that she has taken off her wedding ring during girls' night out to appear she is single, and that she was in love with a former boyfriend on her wedding day. Now, at this point, she has answered 14 questions. And what I just went over was up to question 14. Frank, the husband, is looking peakish in the audience now. He's hearing this stuff for the first time. I didn't point out that Frank, at that time at least, he was a New York City police officer. He was getting blamed because he's uprooted the family, I guess, to move for his job, and she blamed him for that. She was definitely in love with another boyfriend when she said, I do to him. And they asked him, Frank, did you know this? And he goes, man, the ex-boyfriends come up a couple of times. I didn't know she was in love with him. You know, we all have exes. I just thought that she was over it. Turns out, no. Now, looking at Frank, it looks like that he's just about to get sick. At this point, you know it's about to get real deep because Mark also looks like he's about to hurl. He wipes his brow and he looks very stressed out at this point. And I've followed this man's career for a number of years. And I know that there's people like my friend, Mr. Black Pasta, who doesn't really care for him all that much. Some people calls him a joke. But I'm telling you, if you've ever followed his career, you would know that this is the most uncomfortable I've ever seen the man. He looks like that if he could have got up and ran out, then he would have gotten up and just ran out. So he advises her that she could leave now or answer one more question for $100,000. She says she is ready, and Mark says, I do not believe you are ready for question 15. But I'm going to give it to you. And then Lauren says to him, oh my gosh, you're making this worse than what it is. And Mark looks at her and says, I don't think I can make it worse than what it is. He says, all right, Lauren Cleary, this is your $100,000 moment of truth. But I'm not going to ask the question. We have a special guest. And at this time, this other dude comes out. And Lauren goes, oh my God, I can't believe this. Oh my God. And so Mark says, Lauren, are you going to tell everybody who this is? Or do I have to do it? And she looks all flustered. She starts turning a little red and she goes, I can't even speak right now. So you better go ahead and do it. And Mark says, this is her former boyfriend, who ironically is named Frank. I cannot make this up. We got husband Frank. We got boyfriend Frank. I don't know if she did this on purpose because she's still in love with this Frank dude that she's broken up with or what. But it just seemed really odd. So now we got the two Franks. Folks, question number 15 was a doozy. Ex-boyfriend Frank asked her, if I wanted to get back together with you, would you leave your husband? Husband Frank kind of perked up. He was like, I wanted to hear this. This is something that he needed to know. And Mark looked at husband Frank and said, this is a devastating question, Frank. You could avoid it by hitting the button. To which Frank said, no, he needed to hear this answer. Well, guess what happened? Sister Monica decides she's going to come save the day. She smacks the button. And Mark looks at Sister Monica and says, why did you hit that button? Frank really wanted to know that answer. And her reason was, she says, I didn't want to hear that answer. And I don't think no one wanted to hear that answer. Well, somebody did. His name was Frank. He wanted to hear the answer. I wanted to hear the answer. I think I already knew where this answer was going if she was telling the truth. But I think Frank just wanted to hear her say it now so that he could hear from her own mouth. Now, Mark advised them, hey, like I told you, you hit that button. That is a question that goes away. I've already got a replacement question, but I never said the question would be any easier. And he looks at Lauren and says, do you think Monica just saved you or just cost you $100,000? And she says, I don't know. Folks, in my honest opinion, the replacement question for number 15 was worse than the first one. The first one, she should have just let her answer. Because we don't know if the replacement question would have ever been answered if they had it ready to go for the replacement if the button was hit. So then Mark looks and says, okay, I have the replacement question here. I've given the replacement question to Frank and he will ask it now. So ex-boyfriend Frank says, do you believe I am the man you should be married to? That to me, folks, is more devastating than the first question. Now, both of them, as far as I'm concerned, lead you down the same path. And I do believe she would have said, yeah, if he came and said he wanted to get back together, she would leave Frank. But this one right here is more devastating to any man, including me's ego. Because now you have the ex-man that you thought you got rid of standing right here in front of you with your wife sitting on this podium that you love to death. And the question is, do you believe I'm the man you should be married to? And of course, guess what her answer was? She said yes. Now you just looked at your husband, Frank, and been like, sorry, homie, don't know why I married you. Maybe because I couldn't have ex-Frank over here. You was just a fill-in until the day he decides that he wants to come back and say, you know what, Lauren, you the love of my life, come with me. You just told Frank he is absolutely not the man you want to be with. Frank was devastated, people. He dropped his head. He didn't know what to do from here. He didn't know if things were going to get any better or any worse. So at this point, Mark says, congratulations, you have won $100,000 for telling the truth. Now, if I was Mark, I would have said, congratulations, you won $100,000, but at what cost? Are you all about the money? Now, she says she's not about the money. She just wants to get things off her chest. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm sitting here thinking, but she's thinking I'm going all the way to the top of this tree. I'm going to have $500,000. Ex-Frank is back. He already knows that I want him because I just admitted this to the show. Even if my hubby Frank decides to leave me, maybe I can go and crawl back up underneath Frank with $500,000 in my pocket. This is what I think she was thinking. Now, at this point, if it was any other human being who cared about the feelings of the people they brought or their reputation or anything, I think any of those humans would have now quit at this point. They would have looked around the audience. They would have looked at the husband. They would have looked at the mom and the dad, because the mom is more shocked than the dad. And the brother and sister's jaws is on the ground too with some of this stuff. And would have walked. But of course she says, well, what should I do, people? What should I do? And hubby Frank says, there is nothing else you can tell me at this point. Just go on for it, Lauren. And you can tell from the way he said it, he was annoyed. But again, I think what it was Frank had an ulterior motive. And here it was. I think at this point, he already knew this is over. I'm getting a divorce. And just about everything I know of, 50-50 is what you go down that divorce route. I live in California. It's a community property state. That means if you cohabitate with somebody here, whether you're married or not, for 6 months straight, you got your clothes moved in and everything else, you haven't left for 6 months, according to the state of California, you might as well go get a divorce because now you're up underneath the same rules as a married couple. Well, I've been married for 23 years. I'm entitled to half. My wife's entitled to half. And I know Frank only been married for 2 years. He goes, I'm entitled to half this money. So go ahead, Lauren, rack up this. Go all the way up to the 500,000 so that when I get a divorce from you, I can look at the judge and say, either give me half, or I would have been like, Your Honor, I feel like I should have all that money. Give me all 500,000 because I'm only here for the reason that she brought me on this show, embarrassed me to collect this money. So I should have all 500,000. Whether or not the judge would give him all 500, don't know, but he's entitled to half. So now guess what she does? She looks at Mark, she goes, pressing on. She keeps going. At this point now, folks, she's got to answer 3 more questions to get to $200,000. Thing is, how much more can we learn? Is she willing to really further embarrass her family to this point? Mark is looking at her at this point with eyes begging her to stop. You can read his eyes. He's like, man, won't you just knock this off and stop the bleeding? He tells her that a couple of the questions that he had already asked had already went over his personal line. And he says, this one would be worse. And he looks at her and he says to her, you probably know what's coming next. And she says, I think so. And he says, but you want it anyway? And she says, yes. Right there, you have to blame her if you still have people in this episode that says it's the show's fault. Mark has tried now at least 4 times to get her to walk away. He has the questions in his face. He knows what's coming. He just told her, you've already crossed my personal line. This one's worse. You probably know what's coming. Yeah, Mark, I know what's coming, but you want it anyway. At this point, you can no longer blame anybody else for anything that happens except for Lauren Cleary. The show's not trying to get her to go off to save money. They're trying to give her the money she already won and say, won't you just go ahead and see if you can salvage the rest of your relationship? She does not have to go on. But again, aware of the questions that could be coming down the pipe, she chose to go on. Now, if you thought question 15 was bad, 16 was a killer. The question was, since you have been married, have you had sexual relations with someone other than your husband? Husband Frank looks like he is ready to puke, and Mark says he wishes the button was still there. Her answer is yes, and it is confirmed that she told the truth by the lie detector test. Hubby Frank is beside himself. You just told this man that you fake having headaches and sleeping so you don't have to have intimacy with him, and that you was really in love with somebody else on your wedding day, and he's the wrong man to marry because you should have married ex-boyfriend Frank. And now, on top of all of that, you hit him with the fact that you was also out there cheating. Man, a normal man probably would have went and dove off a bridge. Now, after that, looking at Frank's face, looking at the family's face, Mark is really trying to get her to go home. He reminds her that one mistake, she loses it all. Well, folks, this is narcissism at its finest. Number 17, do you think you are a good person? Now, remember the things we have learned. She is a thief. She would rather feed a dog than a homeless person. Delighted when her siblings got in trouble. Cheated on her husband. Said she married the wrong man. And although we did not hear the answer, with what we know now, I am sure the answer was yes to the original number 15, which is, would she leave her husband if ex-boyfriend Frank wanted to get back together? After all of that, she answered yes to number 16, which again was, do you think you are a good person? Guess what happened? The lie detector determined that she was lying. After all the devastation she just put everybody through, possibly the ending of her marriage, possibly the ending of her parents, depending on how that goes, she lost all the money, almost over $200,000, because she said after all of that she believed that she was a good person. Mark actually looked at her and said, what do you think happened? And she says, I don't know. This is who I used to be. I really believe that I really am a good person. So Mark tells her, he says that somewhere she does not think she is a good person, that she hasn't forgiven herself. He says, thank you for coming on the show. Wish you and your feeling the best. And the show was over. After that, Mark comes back on the screen in an empty studio, and he says that he really wishes Lauren Cleary and her family the best, and that some truths are better left unsaid. which I agree, but maybe you just didn't do these things in the first place. To follow that up, Lauren Cleary went on in that year to become known as probably one of the most hated women in the world. She was in People magazine. Everybody was talking about this whole Moment of Truth episode. If you look her name up now, she's listed as an actor because she was in a movie called S-Head. You can fill in the S, and they credit her as Moment of Truth. I'm here to tell you, I don't know why they would credit Moment of Truth as an acting gig. She certainly was not acting. This show has real consequences behind it. And I know at that time, back 2018, they said that this was the most controversial episode. There was other ones that I watched in that series I thought was pretty controversial. And there's only been one or two people that I've seen made it all the way up to the $500,000. And they weren't as damning as she was. One of the guys that I seen that won it all, it was uncovered that he had a very serious gambling addiction. His wife knew that he gambled, but she didn't know to what extent. And they even asked the question, have you lied to your wife about how much money that you have lost while gambling? He said yes. The one redeeming quality of this guy, though, no matter what happened in that episode, he was able to be redeemed. Lauren Cleary can't be redeemed in this one. Here's how he redeemed himself. He said out of all the stuff that he's ever done, he was sorry for. And they asked the last question that was going to get him the $500,000. And they had his son ask it, because I think he had 2 or 3 children. The question that the son asked him was, while he was gambling, did he ever use or clean out any of their savings for college to gamble or pay off a debt? He looked into the camera and at his son and he said, I don't know what this lie detector is going to say, but I promise you, out of everything I've ever done, I have never used any of the money that we've put away for you and your siblings to go to college. The lie detector came back and said he was telling the truth. He and his wife is still together today. He's gambling free. They was able to put that back together. Lauren Cleary, up for divorce. From what I understand, her and Frank got divorced. Frank filed for divorce the next 1 or 2 days after the show. Sadly, he walked away with no money. I do think that maybe he should be compensated for the stuff that he went through in this situation. But this, folks, is what happens when people decide that they would do anything for money. And then at the end of it all, you still have no money because you lost it all on a question that you yourself know should have been a no. You know that all the stuff you just admitted, that you cannot consider yourself a good person, at least not in the time frames that this is being talked about. It is true that she could consider herself a good person now because she's changed those ways, but at the time frame of where these questions was being asked, you know that you were not a good person. I've never murdered nobody and went around with 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 different women and took my wedding band off to pretend like I'm single. Even at my maddest point with my wife, I never removed my wedding band. But there are some things in my past that I've probably done that I would look back and say, you know what, at that time frame, I just was not a very good person at all. This is how I've changed that. I think that happens with all of us, right? I think everybody listening to the sound of my voice can go back at a time and say, you know what, man, revisiting my life, there was a time right here, I just was not a good person. I did some things I should not have done. She should have answered no to that question. I guess in closing, the reason why this case is so important is to say that money cannot buy you everything. Money should not be the thing that we strive for. I get it. We need money to live. We need money to eat. But how much is too much? Is it worth you risking your life, your family's life, the life that you've built, your reputation? It has been hard for Lauren to find a job after this was over. She went on national TV and pretty much said, hey, man, look, I was fired from a job because I stole something. And when Mark asked her to clarify on that, she said, well, it's in the past. I don't like to talk about it. No plea of, if anybody listening that wants to hire me, I don't do that no more, yada, 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 yada. There are some things we just should not do for money. This woman ruined her whole marriage. She's probably ruined to a degree her mom and dad's relationship. I don't know what happened with that because I couldn't find anything on it. But I'm sure that that has something to do with infidelity that she was hiding. I'm sure mom dug into all of that. These game shows and these TV shows, I've yet to do my follow-up when I went on the TV show for court casing. I'm telling you, don't do it. They are not there for you. They're there for ratings. They're there to make whatever looks good. Hell, I'll tell you this. Half of these judge shows that you watch, the people are not even real judges. I'll tell you this. In my case, there was only one of the three that was the judge. It was the guy that sits in the middle, and he is not even acting. He is a retired judge. The other girl, the African-American one, I can't remember their names, she is a true crime blogger. She's been on true crime shows for years. That's how she made her name. Then the last female judge, same thing. She was some type of YouTuber, blogger, whatever the case is, but nobody there was a judge. It's a TV show. I didn't know that going in. When I watched this show before, I'm like, all these people is judges. I know Judge Judy's has some ties. Yeah, we all know that Steve Harvey ain't no dang judge, but every other judge that's come through there, they've had some type of legal work. They've been a lawyer or a prosecutor or something, and they led to a TV show, and now they judge. Not in the case of the show I went on. It's a TV show. And you know when they strap you down to a lie detector test and say, we're going to ask you all these questions, 21 of these questions are going to make it, you should already know they're going to pull the most damning 21 questions that they can pull out of you. On top of all of that, they make it easy at the beginning. Let's put a little coin in their pocket so they can feel like something's going to actually go down and happen. And then that's when they hit you with the doozy. This is truly a crime of humanity, I think. I think it's truly a crime of morality. I don't know where you guys stand on this picture, but would you ever go on a show and out your friends and your family and know that at the end of the show, if you are married, it could potentially destroy your marriage? It could destroy how you get a job. It could destroy your friendships, and it could destroy your entire family. Would you still do it for $500,000? All right, guys, I thank you for tuning into this one. I hope you enjoyed this one. Please be sure to check out this episode. I will leave it in the show notes, so you can just go to it there on YouTube and go ahead and check that out. I think that putting context to it will help you quite a bit. You can see exactly where we was coming from. I will also leave a link to the show Cringe Against Humanity with Mr. Black Pasta. Please make sure you check out his show. It is a good show, and he does a lot of true crime stuff over there. You can also find that a lot of people talking about this Lauren Cleary case all of a sudden because it is that damning. Coming at you next week for my author. She has written a book called A Jacket Off the Gorge. It is part true crime, part memoir, where she is going to tell you how she crossed paths with the man who faked his own death and stole a valuable coin collection. Her name is Susan Asline, and you do not want to miss that. But then I'm going to give you yet one other author. She has a ceramics degree and she battles scoliosis every day. Yes, she wrote God the Artist, revealing God's creative side through pottery, which is an inspirational account of the aspects of pottery and how it is referenced in the Bible. Her name is Morgan McCarver. We had a great conversation, and you definitely don't want to miss that. And then the following week, for my extraordinary person, she is bringing awareness to court corruption. She is a survivor of narcissistic abuse, and she will tell us about energy healing and how it has helped her and can help others. Her name is Dee Hurley, and you definitely don't want to miss that. So once again, Morgan McCarver, Susan Ashline, coming at you next week. You definitely don't want to miss those. And the week after that, D. Hurley, the extraordinary person. Make sure you tune in for all 3 of these. All right, to let you know where I will be contractually, I will be at True Crime Fest in Fayetteville, Arkansas, August 2nd and 3rd of 2024. And then I will be at CrimeCon UK, representing my other podcast, Extinguished, with LaDonna Humphrey, September 21st and 22nd of 2024. Links to get your tickets for both are in the show notes. And if you decide to go to CrimeCon UK, make sure you use the code word Extinguished to get you 10% off. Once again, I'll remind you, if you have listened to no other episodes, please turn in to Extinguished this month so that you can hear us do the case of Deanna Stevenson. You need to put your ears on it. We're trying to get other people to take a look at this case so that we can hopefully get it reopened and help get it solved. Once again, thank you for joining me today. I know you have many choices in true crime and interview podcasts. I am grateful for the last 2.5 years that you have chose me. I'd like to remind you that I'm still the only 3-faceted podcast show where you get an author, true crime, and an extraordinary person out there. Be good to yourself and each other. And always remember, always stay humble. An act of kindness can make someone's day. A little love and compassion can go a long way. And remember that there is an extraordinary person in all of us. I'll catch you on the next one.
Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Join us on social media. One link to the link tree has it all. Feel free to drop us a line at truecrimeandauthors@gmail.com. Cover art and logo designed by Arslan. Sound mixing and editing by David McClam. Intro script by Sophie Wild and David McClam. Theme music, Legendary, by New Alchemist. Introduction and ending credits by Jackie Voice. See you next time on True Crime, Authors, and Extraordinary People.